Okay, we are live. Yes, we are live. Monday Night Raw has just gone off the air. What was that? Honestly, what, honestly, what was that? Like, there were parts of this Raw. I mean, last week I almost felt a bit guilty praising Raw a little bit last week in that Raw, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect last week. But for Raw, it was all right. This week, I mean, there are so many different points when you are watching this show where the logic is just, you might not have been watching, wrestling as long as I have, or you might have been watching wrestling longer, or whatever. But man, I mean, some of the stuff that's been going on in this show at this point, brutal, absolutely brutal parts of that show, and that ending. How is that? I mean, how that is the main event match for anything anyway is crazy to me. But certainly that cliffhanger, like that's going to make you tune in for next week. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, honestly, are you kidding me? You're going to end Monday Night Raw and the big cliffhanger going, you tell you what, I'm not sure if I'm going to watch Raw next week. I'm a little bit on the fence. Should I watch it? Shouldn't I watch it? Oh, what's going to really hook me in next week? And it's Shayna Baszler challenging Reginald. That's the hook. That's the hook for the viewer. That's the one that's really going to hook me in and go, I tell you what, I wasn't going to watch Raw next week, but now Shayna Baszler's challenging Reginald. Who is writing this? I mean, honestly, who on earth is writing this? Because, I mean, I don't even know anymore. Some of the things on this show, man, painful. I mean, just painful to watch at certain points. Now, don't get me wrong, there were parts of this program this week or tonight that, weren't horrendously bad by any stretch of the imagination. We had a great match with Riddle and Xavier Woods. Really fun match. And the opening match when it came to, the WWE Championship, that was fun too. I mean, I hated the ending, but I guess it's par for the course when it comes to Raw now, is that I mean, this is what's crazy. We mock Raw for trying to fill time. It's like as soon as they go on the air, bang, we go on the USA Network, right? We've got 3 hours to fill. How do we do it? And they go to video packages, they go to rematches, they go to whatever. But this week just felt like from the get-go, it was, okay, fill time, 50-50 booking, right? You beat this person before, okay, so you get the win back this week. We're going to not finish this match. We're going to do a rematch next week. And then it was just... It was nonsensical, absolutely nonsensical, and I don't even know what to say anymore when it comes to Monday Night Raw. I really don't know what to say anymore when it comes to Raw, because where do you even start? Let's check the chat. Donald Music Reacts says, "You're right, Owen. I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm trying to digest what that show just was. Honestly, where do you start? We'll find somewhere to start. That being the opening segment with MVP, and it was MVP started Raw. Just move the graphic there. MVP started Raw. He opened things up, and what was funny. What was funny, before I get into the segment, is Adnan Virk welcomed us to Monday Night Raw. He's given it the welcome to Monday Night Raw. The announcer just cut him off. The announcer just cut him off, was just like, please welcome MVP. Thank you, Mr. Announcer. You did a great job there, an absolutely great job there. So MVP opens Raw. He brings out Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley, once again, living the high life, brings out the females once again. And to be honest, a diverse group of females. I'll credit WWE for that. They got a lot of attention last week, and it's great. It's all about representation. So I enjoyed that. So Bobby Lashley makes his way to the ring, and wouldn't you know it, straight away, we get a recap package. Yes, only 2 minutes into the show this time. That might be a record. Now, I said this on social media, watching the show, at 365 Wrestle. It'll ticker down at the bottom of the screen. I said this on the show, and 2 minutes and a recap package, that might be a new record or something for WWE. And one of the comments I got was, well, it's actually pretty normal for most shows to do a recap package at the start of the show, so I don't know what you're complaining about. The staunch WWE defenders, sometimes that are on social media, are honestly maddening. Sometimes when you're just watching, just not even bad pro wrestling, just bad television, and yet you still got some people going, that's actually quite good. I enjoyed it. Or they're just like, again, I don't have a problem with an opening recap package. Totally fine. No problem with that whatsoever. The problem I have is that, so when we get that recap package 2 minutes into the show, you know it's the beginning of like 10 recap packages that are going to come throughout the show. And it was. I would love to know the amount of time that recap packages take up during the show. Maybe that's what I'll do next week. Maybe I'll have a stopwatch and be like, okay, so here's a recap package, bang, click it. Because honestly, it must be like 15 or 20 minutes. I'm not exaggerating. So, crazy. Recap Raw. That's what it is. So they hype up the return to touring, MVP does. I thought it was interesting that he said Bobby Lashley was in the ring with MVP, and he said the champ is here. Now, obviously, he could just be talking, saying the WWE champion is in the ring, or, of course, he could be hinting at the upcoming return to John Cena. Now, a lot of people have assumed with the returns, with the rumored return of John Cena, that would be on SmackDown, right? That's on Fox. That's the bigger network. That's the bigger audience. John Cena's this big global superstar, megastar, Hollywood and TV superstar right now. So surely he would go down to He would come back when he would go to SmackDown, right? Right? Maybe not. Maybe he comes back to Raw. Certainly Raw needs it. Raw needs the numbers. Raw needs the top baby faces to go up against Bobby Lashley. So who's to say? Who's to say John Cena isn't the one to come back and maybe face off against Bobby Lashley? Maybe that's something worth considering there. So they talk about the dark cloud hanging over them is Drew McIntyre. Lashley says, and to be honest, this was, again, when it comes to logic in this opening segment, the heels and Kofi Kingston were dead on in this segment, by the way. So Lashley says, well, why should I have to face Drew McIntyre? I beat him at WrestleMania, which is true. I beat Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman at WrestleMania Backlash. He's not wrong. Then MVP says he blames Drew McIntyre for costing Lashley the match against Kofi Kingston, because, of course, Kofi Kingston rolled up Bobby Lashley last week. And then who would interrupt but Drew McIntyre? Drew McIntyre interrupts again. And I'm a big Drew McIntyre fan. Obviously, I'm probably a bit biased because I'm British and he's from Scotland. But Drew McIntyre is walking a tightrope. I feel like he's walking a tightrope right now because he's getting into that territory of, say, a John Cena, and not in the good way, or like a Batista in 2006, where they're just getting title opportunities, but there's no real reason as to why they should get them anymore. You know, like, say, John Cena would lose the WWE Championship, or he'd lose a WWE Championship match, and then the following night on Raw, he'd come out and he'd just be smiling. He'd be like, oh, didn't win last night, but I'll get it next time. And they'll be like, yes, you will, because John Cena, you've got another WWE Championship opportunity. And you go, right, where's the logic there? And it's kind of the same with Drew McIntyre now, isn't it? Okay, I want a shot at the WWE Championship. Why? You lost twice. How does that work? Well, I want my one-on-one rematch. Well, you lost at WrestleMania. Technically, your one-on-one rematch, I mean, it wasn't technically against The Miz, but your one-on-one rematch was at WrestleMania because you lost to The Miz. You didn't lose to Bobby Lashley. You lost at WrestleMania, and then you lost at WrestleMania Backlash. But I want my one-on-one rematch. What's he done to deserve it? Nothing. And then, you know, he starts doing the John Cena tactic of going to Bobby Lashley, well, look, you want to prove you're the number one superstar on Raw, right? And says, then he starts asking the ladies, which was a bit strange, going, you don't measure up to Drew McIntyre. And starts asking the ladies, these females that are in the ring, starts going, does Bobby Lashley have any balls? And then I was thinking, where on earth is this segment going? Very odd. But out comes Kofi Kingston. He starts talking about pinning Bobby Lashley last week, and Lashley goes, well, you should thank Drew McIntyre. He's the reason you beat me last week. You should thank Drew McIntyre. And McIntyre goes, well, you're welcome. Kofi gives it, what? You're welcome? Drew says, yeah, I said you're welcome. And Kofi goes, no, well, without your help, I would have easily beaten Lashley last week. When we know that's not, again, factually accurate at all. Nevertheless, he's very offended, Kofi Kingston, very offended that Drew McIntyre would dare to say thank you, or you're welcome, rather. He says he didn't need Drew McIntyre's help. He didn't ask for Drew McIntyre's help. And he says that he never got a rematch for the WWE Championship. And once again, that is true. That is true. So if we're dealing in facts here, the only person that's not dealing in reality is Drew McIntyre. He's meant to be the babyface. This is where the logic on this show is just so backwards that you just go, I don't understand. Where is the sense here? Where is the sense? Noob & Co's in the chat says, hey, Owen, how you doing? I'm good. I'm just confused. I'm very confused. And just that whole I mean, I'm surprised I can see straight at the moment, because the amount of times I rolled the eyes into the back of my head during that show of just going, oh, like that. Honestly. So, Kofi Kingston says I never got a rematch for the WWE Championship, which is true. He says that Drew McIntyre's getting rematch after rematch after rematch after rematch. Bear in mind, this whole segment's about getting rematches, and WWE, remember, got rid of rematches in December 2018. But we're still doing rematches here on this show, and we got 1 million of them, and we're going to get some more next week as well. But they don't do rematches anymore, WWE. Remember that, they don't. Anyway, Adam Pearce then comes out after things start getting heated. He comes out and he says, Kofi Kingston versus Drew McIntyre, winner will face Bobby Lashley at Hell in the Cell. So you go, okay, that was fine. I mean, the opening segment, it was what it was. It was a fine opening segment. Sets up the number one contender match. I thought, well, the outcome is relatively predictable. We know that Drew McIntyre is going to face Bobby Lashley at Hell in the Cell. Even though the outcome, what happens in the outcome of this match, we still know that is the case. He will be facing Bobby Lashley at Hell in the Cell because Drew has to have all the rematches. Why? Again, there's no logic there. And this is the thing. This kind of booking turns an audience against a babyface. And it's funny, isn't it? Because people can say, oh, the fans, they like people, and then they turn on them really quickly. Whether it's, Roman Reigns, whether it's Seth Rollins, and now Drew McIntyre, the fans, they turn on them so quickly. You want these babyfaces to succeed, and then you turn on them once they get a bit of success. The issue always is the writing. It's always the writing. WWE doesn't know how to book a top babyface. They don't. They did it with Roman Reigns. They did it with Seth Rollins. Now they're doing it with Drew McIntyre. They make these people that are babyfaces fundamentally really unlikable. You watch them and they start, spouting stuff that isn't true, that has no logic to them. And you watch it and you go, well, yeah, why does Drew McIntyre deserve another championship opportunity? He doesn't. And then you start getting a sense of injustice against people like Kofi Kingston. You go, that's not right. And so you're already thinking of Drew McIntyre as the heel. He's meant to be the babyface in the situation. There is no logic. There is no logic. It's nonsensical. So we go to commercial. We come back. We get one of those promos that we got 1 million of tonight about WWE return to touring. And we got the first of many promos. It was like going back in time to the 1980s of essentially the WWE superstars, and I guess we'll see them on SmackDown this week as well. We'll see these WWE superstars doing these promos, talking about their excitement to return to touring. And when I tell you that these promos were bad, I'm not doing it justice. They were horrible. They were some of the worst promos, like scripted vignettes, staring to the camera, read off a teleprompter promos I've ever seen. They were so bad. The first one we had was Braun Strowman. All of his terrible puns. He's the conductor of destruction, all aboard the Strowman Express. The amount of train puns they got in here. I can't wait to get back on the road. And if anyone gets in the way, they're going to get these hands. Chew, chew, chew. Get back on the right track. I mean, honestly, I was waiting for a Thomas the Tank Engine reference. There was that many train references there. This was a guy that a couple of weeks ago was challenging for the WWE Championship. Now he's making train puns, hyping up a return to Texas. Like, what is going on? And that was just the recurring theme tonight. What is going on? What is going on? So we had the Kofi Kingston versus Drew McIntyre match. Winner of this match was going to face Bobby Lashley at Hell in the Cell for the WWE Championship. Now, I must say this match was very good. It was very good. We had MVP and Bobby Lashley. They had the VIP lounge on the stage. They were watching the match. They kept talking about Kofi Mania and possible Kofi Mania 2 on commentary. They were trying to hype that up. And this really bothered me. And I apologize if I'm on a bit of a moan tonight, but it was one of those shows. Adnan Virk. Now, Adnan Virk, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I thought, well, maybe he doesn't have the knowledge of the product. Give him a couple of weeks to get up to speed. He's not up to speed at all. He still, he might have a little bit of a better knowledge of the product just by being there, but certainly doesn't have the knowledge required to be the lead play-by-play commentator for Monday Night Raw. He doesn't have it. Now, I think he's on a longer leash because, by all accounts, he was a Nick Khan hire, of course, the WWE president, and I guess he wants his signings to work. But Adnan Virk's not working. He's not working. As is evidenced by when he was talking about Kofi Mania, and he asked Byron Saxton and Corey Graves, how wild was Kofi Mania back in the day? Back in the day, that was just over 2 years ago. That was at WrestleMania 35. That was in 2019. We're in 2021 at this point. Just over 2 years ago. That's back in the day. Now, I know in the world of WWE, that's probably true because 2 years is pretty much a lifetime in the world of professional wrestling. But back in the day, I mean, this isn't, WrestleMania 1 and Hulk Hogan in Madison Square Garden. That's back in the day. I know the pandemic has made things feel like a lifetime ago and all that kind of stuff. But back in the day, and it's just these different points throughout the evening when Adnan Virk is talking where you go, this guy doesn't have a clue. He does not have a clue on earth what he's watching. If he doesn't know what to call something, he just sort of screams and shouts, "Oh, baby." He did that about 10 different times and starts rattling off some obvious facts he's reading off a sheet in front of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he's got little profile pictures with the superstars' names next to him because he doesn't know them all at this point. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. So we had Kofi Kingston fighting back. McIntyre got a lot of the offense in for the majority of this match, as you would expect. There was a cross-body spot by Kofi Kingston. Drew McIntyre rolled through into a real nasty Michinoku driver. Absolutely spiked him. Was a great spot. McIntyre then, this bothers me. McIntyre goaded Lashley, says, "Come to the ring. Come on, come to the ring." So Lashley starts walking down the ramp. And they're going, there could be a confrontation here. So what would you do? If there is a confrontation between someone, the WWE champion, possibly going to be a physical confrontation, could be the end of the match, what would you do? If this was the UFC, if someone's about to walk into the octagon, what would you do? Let's go to commercial. We'll find out when we come back. I get it's a cliffhanger, but again, where is the logic in that one? We're gonna have a big fight, but we're not gonna see it because we've got to see some commercials about Ric Flair selling car insurance or something like that. I mean, again, logic. Anyway, so we come back from commercial. Lashley and MVP, they've ditched the VIP lounge at the top of the ramp. They're now at ringside. We see, again, some real great work from McIntyre and Kofi. They really worked their behinds off in this one. We see McIntyre hit a belly-to-back suplex to Kofi from the second rope, which was nice. There was a nice spot where McIntyre goes for the Future Shock DDT, but it got counted into a jackknife cover by Kingston, which was nice. McIntyre hits a deadlift powerbomb for a 2 count. You sort of forget, with all of the stuff that McIntyre's done over the course of the last year, being the face of Raw, being the WWE champion, fundamentally for a guy his size. I mean, McIntyre's how tall is he? He's like 6'6", something like that. He's a big dude, 6'6", like 250 or something. McIntyre's an excellent wrestler, a really, really good in-ring wrestler. You can't take that away from him. So we go into the finish where it's Kofi Kingston. He goes with his trust fall onto McIntyre at ringside. McIntyre crashes into Lashley, which, of course, the ultimate disrespect in WWE is if you're doing commentary or you're sitting at ringside, if someone bumps into you, you have to get involved in the match. You have to get involved in the match. That's how it works. So because McIntyre crashes into Lashley, in comes Lashley and MVP. They attack Kingston and McIntyre at the same time. So it's a double disqualification, no contest, whatever you want to call it. Kingston then hits a Trouble in Paradise on Lashley, followed by a Claymore kick by McIntyre to Lashley, no contest. So we have a match, we have an angle that lasts like 30 minutes, 40 minutes to set up the WWE Championship match at Hell in a Cell, and we go to a no contest. Why? Because it's Monday Night Raw. That's what they do. We don't have legitimate outcomes. If we do, they roll it back the next week, and the opposite happens because you have 50-50 booking. It's just lame. You can't invest in something because you don't believe you're going to see an actual outcome. You don't believe you're going to see it. You think it's going to be a no contest. This is the thing. I'm not surprised when it comes to a no contest. I'm not surprised when it comes to a double disqualification. I'm not surprised when it comes to a count out or an interference because we see this every single week. As an audience, you're conditioned to this. And every time they do a no contest, every time they do a double disqualification, you just go, oh, again, great. The match was great, though. And it's just, as someone watching at home, it's just like, you do get invested in the match because the match is good and they are great wrestlers. And then you do get the finish and you go, well, what was the point of me getting invested? You feel kind of robbed. You feel a bit used that you got invested in the match. You wanted to see what the outcome was. And when there's no outcome, it's like, oh, it's like watching a movie. It's like watching a film and going like, this film's great. I'm really into this one. And then the ending sucks. And you go, well, that movie sucks now because I didn't like it. I didn't like the ending. Or it's like a great television series. You know, it's like Dexter. I'm a huge fan of Dexter, the TV series, and it was great. And then it had a really crappy ending, and you go, oh, that kind of ruined it for me. So much so they're having to bring it back this year, which I can't wait for. Certainly would prefer to watch that than Monday Night Raw tonight. So it's just, it's frustrating. It's frustrating, but what are you going to do? That's what Raw does. That's what Raw does. Raw does no contests, double disqualifications, countouts, rematches, 50-50 booking, and that was just the first match of the show, guys. That was just the first match of the show. There's plenty more to come where this comes from. So after that, and then this kind of bothered me as well. So you have the no contest, and they're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, anyway, earlier today, Charlotte Flair, it was like they just moved on so quickly. They just didn't address it till later on in the show, which was just all of this show, just so many points. You go logic, and maybe it's just we just shouldn't question it, because if you question it, you'll drive yourself insane. So it goes to Charlotte Flair, who was earlier today walking backstage. Luckily, there was a camera there. Charlotte Flair's walking backstage earlier today. And Rhea Ripley comes up to Charlotte and she says, good luck. Says, you'll need it because you'll probably lose. Joke was on Rhea. Charlotte says Rhea just wants to be like her and successful. That's why she doesn't like her. And suddenly Nikki Cross shows up. Yes, Nikki Cross, after her Lumberjack appearance last week, Nikki Cross had an appearance and she actually had a match on Raw. Now, Nikki Cross says, I can beat both of you. And Charlotte says, well, I have a match and you're not worth my time anyway. And says, I could beat you in 2 minutes. And Rhea Ripley says that people don't pretend to not like her. They just don't, because she talks down to them. And Rhea Ripley says, I accept your challenge, Nikki Cross, and I will beat you in 2 minutes. Now, I said this about Rhea Ripley last week, and I don't mean it necessarily as a criticism to her, because I like Rhea Ripley, and I'm a big fan of Rhea Ripley. I was a big fan of Rhea Ripley in NXT. But the scripted promos she is getting on the main roster are doing her no favors. And I think the delivery of the scripted promos by Rhea Ripley are doing her no favors. I know that she is taking acting classes to improve her promo delivery, which I think is justified, frankly, and needed. But every single week I watch Rhea Ripley, I get more and more concerned, because this isn't the Rhea Ripley we know from NXT. It's not. And every single week, that Rhea Ripley that we did know and we did enjoy from NXT gets slowly stripped away. And it's the same NXT situation, isn't it? You get called up, they remove piece by piece your character, and then you're left with someone that's completely different to who got over in NXT. And it's already happening with Rhea Ripley. And I know the counter-argument with that will be, well, she's the Raw Women's Champion. How is that happening? But people will judge her for it. People will judge her in WWE and say her Raw Women's Championship reign sucked. Well, that's because the material she's been given sucks. And that's as simple as that. That's as simple as that. So we go to an Eva Marie vignette, the first of two. I think they might have showed this last week, because she starts talking about wanting to play a heroine again, like Angelina Jolie. And then she goes, I don't want to play a hero, I want to be a hero. And she goes saying about wanting to be an inspiration to people, all that kind of stuff. They're desperate. I'm convinced at this point that WWE are trying to position Eva Marie as a babyface, and they could do that if they were staying in the Thunderdome for the next 3 or 4 months, but they're not. So if they think they can portray her as a babyface, they are incredibly naive, because that ain't happening. Once they get Eva Marie in front of a crowd, despite all of these vignettes trying to be inspirational, all that kind of stuff, audiences hate inspirational or forced inspiration. They don't like that. Especially modern day fans. They don't like being told who to like, and they don't like being told, like, you didn't like this person before, but now she's really inspirational. She left and came back, didn't wrestle, but you've got to cheer her now when you booed her out the building before. The audience in WWE and pro wrestling, they appreciate hard work. They appreciate commitment, and they appreciate someone trying to work on their craft to get better. Now, if Eva Marie comes back and she has great matches, which I don't think will happen, maybe she has been training the last 9 months or whatever, however long she's been signed at the Performance Center. If she comes back and has great matches, the fans will buy into her. They aren't going to buy into her as a babyface because she says that she wants to be an inspiration. If anything, that will have fans booing her more. And if that is the intention to have her being booed, that's great. But if they're positioning her as a babyface, ain't happening. It just ain't happening. Now, speaking of ain't happening, this Rhea Ripley Raw Women's Championship reign, because we have the Rhea Ripley Nikki Cross. It's a beat the clock challenge. They said in the promo that you had 2 minutes to beat Nikki Cross, and if Rhea Ripley doesn't beat Nikki Cross in 2 minutes, she loses. So you would think the Raw Women's Champion the young Raw Women's Champion. They're trying to get her over as this big, dominant badass on Monday Night Raw. Still don't know if she's a heel or a babyface, frankly. I don't think the creative team do. But you're thinking, Rhea Ripley, I feel bad for Nikki Cross because she's going to lose in 2 minutes here. There's no way they would have Rhea Ripley not win this match, considering she is the Raw Women's Champion. Or at the very least, it'll be because of interference. This would probably be the best time for interference, considering all the other matches they do it in. This would be the best one. So Nikki Cross, she just has to survive 2 minutes to win. Bear in mind, when Rhea Ripley makes her way to the ring, there is a giant clock on the screen. I mean, a giant clock on the screen. You can't miss it. You can't miss it in the Thunderdome. You can miss it at home, let alone in the Thunderdome. The thing's ginormous. Okay, bear in mind that. It's on the screen and it says 2 minutes. So Nikki Cross gets some early offense in, but then Rhea Ripley, she starts to dominate. You're thinking, right, here we go. It's just a matter of time. So it's a drop kick by Rhea Ripley. She gets Nikki Cross into the corner, starts stomping her, starts punching her in the face, and just starts laying into her. And then Rhea Ripley just forgets. She just forgets about the 2 minutes. She forgets about the entire reasoning for the match. Bear in mind, you've had a promo earlier today. You've had a big clock on the screen. You've had an announcement by the ring announcer just 2 minutes ago saying that all you've got to do is last 2 minutes. And if you don't last 2 minutes, Nikki Cross wins. After all of this, Rhea Ripley just forgets. She just forgets. The buzzer goes off and Rhea Ripley looks shocked going, what? What? Oh, yeah, the giant thing on the screen there, that giant clock that said 2 minutes, and if I don't do it in 2 minutes, I lose. So, and Nikki Cross, she's happy, she's high-fiving, she's really happy, she's running around, she's great, she's, I won. Out comes Charlotte Flair, she's laughing at Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley looked like the biggest idiot. I mean, the biggest idiot. So you're Raw Women's Champion now. Again, we don't know if she's a heel or a babyface. I think she's a heel because the Thunderdome boo her. But she's going on about Charlotte Flair saying that nobody likes her because she looks down on her. But I guess no one likes Rhea Ripley either because she's stupid. She's giving it all that all the time. Well, she can't even, I guess she can't count or she can't see that there's this giant, or can't remember, all of the above, this giant clock on the screen. She can't get anything. I mean, it just... what a great way to make your champion, your new champion who's just got on the main roster recently, what a great way to make Rhea Ripley look great and strong. Big and strong and dominating. She forgot. She forgot. She's just an idiot. She forgot. It's ridiculous. It was just the most ridiculous thing. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for having Nikki Cross being featured in, but what even was that? Nikki Cross didn't win. She just didn't get beat up for 2 minutes. And she's running around all happy that she won by technicality, by surviving for 2 minutes. Who benefits? Nobody does. Nikki Cross, I guess, kind of benefited because she won, but not really. Rhea Ripley really didn't benefit. Nobody won from that. Nobody. And I saw some people trying to justify that on social media going, oh, it just shows the intensity of Rhea Ripley. No, it doesn't. It shows the idiocy of Rhea Ripley that she couldn't see. She couldn't see a clock on the screen. And she couldn't remember that they said 2 minutes before it, if you don't do it in 2 minutes, you will lose. She couldn't remember that they did a promo backstage earlier today, whereby it was said 2 minutes beat Nikki Cross. The whole intention was the 2 minutes, and it was everywhere. It was plastered everywhere. But Rhea Ripley forgot because she was laying in her punches. It was the most ridiculous segment, and some of the worst booking of a champion you will find, of a new up-and-coming champion. Rhea Ripley, I think, how old is she? She's like 24, 25? Man, this kind of bad booking sticks. And it's ridiculous. And to be honest, I kind of have no doubts that Charlotte Flair will win the Raw Women's Championship at Hell in a Cell. Because why would she have any trouble in someone that can't remember 2 minutes ago the actual objectives of the match? I mean, really? She'd be, you know, if Rhea Ripley got this kind of mindset, she'd be going for pins in Battle Royals. I mean, it's stupid. It's just stupid. It made Rhea Ripley look like just the biggest idiot. The biggest idiot. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. Let's check the chat here. Noob & Co says, Rhea's first loss on the main roster, and it was due to time limit. It doesn't make sense. Same thing goes with Asuka. WWE stripped her of her character because it's all that's left. What is some semblance of the character in NXT, and now Asuka is just enjoying social media. Darthor says, Rhea is a heel based on what the Thunderdome people are told. Well, exactly, that's what they're told, but then she's feuding with Charlotte Flair, who's a bigger heel. So we got a heel versus heel rivalry. Vonville says Vince is out to sabotage Rhea to put Charlotte back on top. Noob & Co says, like I said, Rhea's first loss on the main roster with a time limit match. It was one of those ones where she's beating her up in the corner, and I'm thinking, well, where's the finish here? Where's the angle? I'm thinking, are they going to disqualify Rhea? Because at least with a kind of a disqualification, you kind of been like, well, the intensity was so high that she's got this short fuse and she snapped and she just beat the hell out of Nikki Cross. You could go, well, she lost, but she kind of won because she got herself over as this really dominant heel. You could get that. Or I thought it's going to be like really close, but Rhea Ripley's going to pull out in the last second or something like that. And they just had her lose by being stupid. It was so silly. It was so silly. And again, who benefits? Nobody. Nobody benefits. So anyway, we have a Damian Priest promo. And again, this is one of those, we're coming back on tour, guys. So it was a Damian Priest promo. Come see Damian Priest. This then transitions to Adam Pearce backstage. In come Drew McIntyre and Kofi Kingston. They come back in and they're annoyed because of what happened earlier on in the show. Adam Pearce says, because it's Monday Night Raw, by the way. Because it's Monday Night Raw. Adam Pearce says, we'll run it back next week. Raw is rematch. Rematch Raw. Raw, run it back next week. That might as well be the tagline for the show. Monday Night Raw, let's run it back next week. Because that's what they do. He says, I know it's annoying, but we're going to have McIntyre versus Kofi. Same terms, let's run it back. So we've got McIntyre versus Kofi next week. Winner faces Bobby Lashley at Hell in the Cell for the WWE Championship. Kofi says, as long as you can keep MVP and Bobby Lashley away, I'm happy with that. And again, it's just so lame. And I said it earlier before. Like, I really enjoyed the match between McIntyre and Kofi earlier. I'm all for Kofi being involved in the WWE Championship chase. He should be. Raw needs it. Raw needs top baby faces to challenge Lashley. And even though it's going to be McIntyre versus Lashley at Hell in the Cell, I hope at some point we get Kofi versus Lashley. Because we need top baby faces. And Kofi should be in that championship picture. I have no problem about that whatsoever. Just as a fan, as a viewer at home, I'm already going into that match next week going, how are they going to screw up the finish? Are we going to get something else where how do MVP and Lashley get involved? Because I know they've put some stipulation on about the 90-day suspension, but they could find a way. They could find a way. And it got to a point when I was listening to this segment, I was thinking, does any match not end in a no contest or a DQ or a distraction roll-up or an interference? And it's another rematch. It's copy and paste Raw. It's Control V. Rerun Raw. Monday Night Raw recap. Let's run it back next week. Monday Night Raw rematch every single week. That's why the show's so dull, is because we've seen it 10 times. The best match on this show, and we'll get onto it in a bit, the best match on this show was Riddle versus Xavier Woods because it was fresh and it was different and it had a clean finish. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult, and it's just constantly rematch. The main event this week, if you can call it that, was a rematch that we have seen twice. It's constant. And then we've got to run it back because we had a controversial finish. It was a roll-up, it was a distraction, it was a DQ, it was a count-out, it was a no contest. So we've got to have the match again. Even though the match we just first saw lasted about half an hour because it didn't have a finish, we've got to get that rematch because we know you're so desperate to see it, right? It's just, that's the show. That is the show. Nothing is fresh. It's all off. It's all off. If this was food, you'd be throwing it all out. It's way past its sell-by date. So then we have Charlotte Flair versus Asuka. Again, talk about rematches. But we've seen this a million times. And again, it doesn't mean it's a bad match, because it wasn't. Charlotte Flair and Asuka was a good match on this show. It was a great match. They've got great chemistry. Now, they should. They've had about 1 million matches together. They could probably do it with their eyes closed. In fact, they might have a blindfold match just to do the match again. But it's just... Again, it's not that it's a bad match. You can watch the match and the match is fine and you'll go, that was a good match. But it doesn't mean anything because you've seen it over and over and over and over again. But anyway, we'll go through the match because it happened. Asuka goes for the hip attack and Charlotte hits a chop block. It was a nice counter. And again, this was a good match. And this was the story of the match. Charlotte works over the leg. Whether it's an ankle lock by Charlotte, she smashes Asuka's ankle into the steel steps. Charlotte locks in a Boston Crab. Asuka goes for an armbar, but Charlotte makes it to the ropes. There was a nice spot where Charlotte goes for a moonsault. She lands on her feet. Asuka hits a German suplex. And as I mentioned, they have great chemistry. They really have great chemistry. And they should. They should because they've worked together so times. The match went really long. It had about 3 segments. Charlotte went for a big boot and Asuka turned it into a knee breaker of sorts, which is a nice spot. Then Charlotte went into a load of Andrade spots, which was quite interesting. She goes for the big boot, turns it into that spinning elbow. Didn't kind of click that one. Didn't kind of work. One spot she did get though, the Andrade spot. She did the double moonsault spot, where she does the moonsault, the opponent moves out the way, and they just transition into another moonsault. She nailed that one, so that was good. So the finish, Asuka goes for an Asuka lock. Charlotte rolls backwards, and Asuka's shoulders are down on the mat, and the ref counts 3. It was an okay finish. I mean, I think it could have been executed better, frankly, because from a couple of camera angles, it was questionable whether Asuka's shoulders were actually down. And I know Charlotte's shoulders were on top of Asuka's, so you couldn't say hers were down, but it was questionable. But I mean, it's as clean of a finish as you're going to get on Monday Night Raw. I mean, it really is. And that was the first pinfall we got on Monday Night Raw, and it was 90 minutes into the show. 90 minutes it took to get a pinfall on this show. And what's crazy about it is you go, of course Charlotte Flair wins. Why does Charlotte Flair win this week? Because Asuka won last week. 50-50 booking is the strongest character on this show, ladies and gentlemen. It's got nothing to do with Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, or whoever. They're not the strongest characters. 50-50 booking, man, he is getting the biggest push on this show. 50-50 booking. It's alive and wow. So I was thinking, right, okay, Asuka's got a victory. Charlotte Flair's got a victory. 50-50 booking as it is. We'll get that rubber match next week. Monday Night Raw rubber match, rematch. Run it back Raw. And we didn't. We didn't. We got an announcement about the Raw Women's Championship later on in the show. They can't even stick to their own bad logic. So backstage, Bobby Lashley's with his females once again, and a stagehand comes up to him and says, Adam Pearce wants to see you. So we know we're going to get that back when we go back from the break. Now, we got another one of these promos. We got another one of these promos where it's like, we're excited to go back to touring, that kind of stuff. And this one, genuinely, I think this one was the worst one of the night. This was Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. And they start talking about going back on tour. And, oh, my God, this was awful. This was awful. I was this close to turning it off after this promo. Not that I'm not fans of Mandy Rose or Dana Brooke or anything like that. They're fine. I mean, I'm not crazy on the tag team. I don't get the whole, they come out and, that's the gimmick, right? That is the gimmick. And it's a shame because Mandy Rose at one point was super over, especially the stuff of Otis, but even prior to that, but whatever. But they're going flex with us in Texas. It's just, who wrote that? Because if that was my promo and they said, right, what's the line? And they go, flex with us in Texas, I would rep it up and throw it in their face and say, do you want me to end my career right here? Because that is that bad of a line. Awful. I mean, I know I shouldn't get that angry about a promo that's hyping up the return to touring, but man, it was bad. Man, it was bad. That, and just the smile. And then, it's that smile, look to the partner, look back and smile again. I mean, come on. So Bobby Lashley and MVP, they go to Adam Pearce's office. Pearce questions if this is how Lashley wants to represent Monday Night Raw. And Lashley goes, I was just trying to help Pearce out. I don't know how. I don't know how he was trying to help Adam Pearce out. I'm trying to help you out by not giving you a match at Hell in a Cell. Yeah, that's good logic there. So Adam Pearce says, well, look, we're going to have the match again next week. It's going to be Kofi Kingston versus Drew McIntyre once again. And winner's going to face you at Hell in a Cell. And if either of you get involved next week, or if you even go to ringside, Lashley will be suspended for 90 days without pay. So a lot of people would say, well, that means we're getting a clean finish next week. Not necessarily, guys. They said Lashley or MVP. Who's to say it's not Mason T-Bar that get involved or something like that? I mean, honestly, who's to say, right? They'll find a way. They will find a way. So, speaking of the Hurt Business, I mean, it would have been great if they'd have had a faction like the Hurt Business that could have used them next week to get involved, but they didn't. They split them up. Because now we have a video package about Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin, about their time in the Hurt Business, their demise, their breakup, and this is recapping for a match that is Shelton Benjamin versus Cedric Alexander. So they come out to their old themes, but before the match, Cedric Alexander cut a promo. And I'm conflicted about this Cedric Alexander promo. First of all, it went, I mean, unbelievably long. I mean, there were certain points of it, he's chatting, and I thought, well, this is going to be one of those promos, maybe it goes like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, not going to be that long. This must have gone like 3 or 4 minutes. Honestly, I'm not exaggerating. It was a really long promo by Cedric Alexander, and he didn't say that much during the promo. He just kind of kept saying, look at me. I'm in my prime. He kept saying, I'm in my prime. Look at me shouting, you're not in your prime. I'm in my prime. And his voice cracked about 10 million times. It was just really long and really bizarre. And in fairness, I was watching this, and I don't know if it's because I wasn't feeling the promo, but Cedric Alexander came across as just the most annoying guy. I mean, you wanted to see him just get beaten the hell out of by Shelton Benjamin. I mean, just you wanted to see him just get absolutely destroyed because he was so annoying. Whether it was the squeaky voice or whether it was just a really long promo, whatever. And he's saying that Shelton Benjamin's washed up and he was the one that carried the team. And again, that's heel 101 promo. But then he just carried on. The promo never ended. I mean, it just kept going and going and going. And then he's saying, I've got years to make up for my past mistakes. How many years have you got left? I'm in my prime. I'm in my prime. I mean, he was really going for it. And he says, after I beat you tonight, you'll be gone for good. And it was just the longest and most insufferable promo you've ever heard in your life. I mean, it went on forever. And it felt like there was no need at all. And to be honest, at the time I was like, I'm not sure what this adds, but I guess, I mean, I was there and I suppose I'm invested. This is why I'm conflicted here. Because I was so annoyed, and I don't know if that's just because of Raw or because of the promo, but I really wasn't feeling the promo. And I was so watching it like, oh, God, shut up. And but then afterwards, when I was realizing that, I was like, is that heat? I think that's heat. And I know the problem is with the modern day fan is that if someone does have legitimate heat, they'll just turn the channel, right? Because if you don't want to see someone, back in the day, if you didn't like someone, you'd be like, I really want to see this guy get beat up, so I'm going to watch and I'm going to pay to see him get beat up. Now, the modern day viewer, if they don't like someone, they'll change the channel. It's slightly different. Or they'll go on social media and say, I don't like this guy, and then that's it, and they'll stop watching. And I was sort of, and again, initially I was so like, oh, this promo sucks by Cedric Alexander. His voice is so whiny and it's cracking all the time, and it's just, his promo's long. But then I was like, I think this is heat. And I wanted to see Shelton Benjamin beat the hell out of him. And I was like, I guess that means he's doing good. I mean, he's a heel, and the heel's job is to be, if his character is meant to be this insufferable sort of whiny child, man, he's playing it to a T. And that's what happened in the match. Cedric Alexander, for the majority of this match, just got the hell kicked out of him by Shelton Benjamin, which was good. Benjamin's thrown Cedric Alexander into the barricade. I mean, and Cedric Alexander was selling the hell out of this stuff. I mean, he really was. He was doing like the Ric Flair scream, going, ah. And he kind of won me over from a point where I was like, at the start of his promo, I was like, the promo was still long. Don't get me wrong. The promo was really, really long. But he kind of won me over in the sense that I was a bit like, I want to see this guy get the hell kicked out of him. And he did. But I mean, Adnan Virk, again, had no idea what was going on. So he just started, at one point, because I've got my notes in front of me here. At one point, he just started screaming, oh, baby. And I thought, what is going on at the announce table at this point? Anyway, there was one point where Cedric Alexander, and again, this was a great spot. It was a great spot where he's just kicking Shelton Benjamin in the face, screaming at him, going, gold standard, oh, you're nothing. Oh, team angle, you're nothing. And Shelton Benjamin, and it's not hurting Shelton Benjamin, he's just pissed off at this point. And so was I. And so eventually he gets up. And he just hits Cedric Alexander with such a clothesline. He nearly took the guy's head off. And it was great. It was great because that's what you wanted to see. You wanted to see Cedric Alexander get his head kicked off. And he was good. He was good at being annoying because he was being insufferable. He was really insufferable. So Shelton Benjamin's hitting German suplexes, and it looks like he's about to get the win. Cedric Alexander gets the thumb in the eye, hits the neutralizer, gets the win. Which you would say is probably the right call. Cedric's the younger superstar. He is in his prime, as he would say. But a couple of weeks ago, what did we have? Shelton Benjamin got the win. And it's 50-50 booking. And 50-50 booking means we'll run it back once again. We'll get another rematch. Rematch, baby. Rematch Raw. Run it back Raw. And that's what it will be. And so after the match, Cedric's running his mouth once again. But it will be a rematch again. Because they'll say, oh, it's one apiece. We've got to have the rubber match. So wait for that next week. I mean, it hasn't been announced, but wait for that next week. We get another local promo by John Morrison, talking about Johnny Drip Drip and being the most moist C superstar in WWE history. I feel bad for John Morrison because this is a guy that's unbelievably talented, but what on earth is that promo? I mean, really, what on earth is that promo? We then got the match of the night. I mean, we really did. We then got the match of the night, which was Xavier Woods versus Riddle. This was brilliant. I mean, this really was brilliant. So it started off with both guys doing some mat wrestling. Woods goes for a double leg, which was counted into a guillotine. I mean, this was the presentation of Riddle that I like. You can do all the silly and goofy stuff. This is what they were doing in NXT. They were doing all the silly and goofy stuff. Once the bell rings, though, this is a former UFC fighter. This is a former MMA guy. He can beat the hell out of you. That's the presentation I like. And there was some spots in this match that were just incredible. There was one, they're in a sort of a Greco-Roman sort of, I guess, test of strength kind of thing, whereby Riddle's on the mat on his back, and Xavier Woods is kind of above him, and they use the strength, and Xavier Woods turns this into a suplex from the mat. I mean, I'm not doing it justice by that description, but it was unbelievable, and it was such a great match. Such a great match because it was fresh, it was new, it was different. We haven't seen it a million times on Raw. It wasn't a rematch in that sense. I know we've had the tag team matches and that kind of stuff, but it was different and it was new. And then there was one spot. I mean, this was crazy. I mean, I was worried for a second. I thought Woods had broken his neck, whereby Woods is on sort of the middle rope, and Riddle hits a German suplex from the middle rope onto Xavier Woods, and he just about dumped him on his head. I mean, he's lucky he didn't. He avoided disaster there, but that could have been, honestly, it could have been really bad. It was a cringe thing, but thankfully Woods is fine. But it was a scary spot. I mean, it's a great spot, but it was a scary spot. So the closing moments, Riddle hits an RKO for the victory, and it was a great match. A really good match. Best match of the night by far. That should have been the main event. It was fresh. It was new. We haven't seen it a million times before. It continues this simmering feud between RK Bro and the New Day, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hell out of it. Great match. New match. That's what you need to be. That's all Raw needs to be. Just don't do the rematches every single week. Have a bit of creativity. You've got about 500 people on that creative team. Why don't you be a bit creative? Come up with something new. Come up with something different. It's just the problem. They're out of ideas. They're just completely out of ideas at this point, it feels like. But it was a great match. Match of the night. Loved it. Really enjoyed that match. Then we get an announcement for Hell in a Cell, the Raw Women's Championship match. You would think Charlotte Flair won tonight. She beat Asuka. Last week, Asuka beat Charlotte Flair in a match on Raw. So you would think, right, there's probably going to be sort of a number one contenders match, considering WWE logic. That would make a lot of sense. No, it's Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair, Hell in a Cell, that's it. You're still going to go, well, didn't Asuka win last week, though? I'm pretty sure she did. But if I was Asuka, I'd be pretty pissed off. I'd be like, I know I lost tonight, but I won last week. What's Charlotte Flair done? I mean, I know Asuka got pinned at WrestleMania Backlash, but if we're talking about claims to the title, Drew McIntyre's getting all of these opportunities. What's the difference? There is none. It's stupid. No logic. And Nikki Cross, technically she beat the champion this week by time limit, but should she get an opportunity as well? Again, it's just these kind of booking decisions that just no logic at all. And not even like logic that sometimes you can get away with it, whereby there's superficial logic, and you go, oh, okay, I get that. But if you dive into it, you go, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Just even on the surface, none of this stuff makes sense. None of this makes sense. And I'm concerned for Rhea Ripley because I think, given the way she's been booked so far, those in WWE, the higher ups, might be like, well, I'm not sure the Rhea Ripley experiment's working. Let's just get the title on Charlotte. They'll do it in a heartbeat. Especially with now they've got fans coming back as well. They go, we've got to have a strong female champion for fans returning. Let's put it on Charlotte Flair. She deserves it. It's a matter of time. It is a matter of time. I would be really, really, really surprised if Rhea Ripley cleanly beat Charlotte Flair at Hell in a Cell. That would be stunning. It would certainly be more surprising than Charlotte Flair winning. Put it that way. Now, speaking of surprising, and I guess just disappointing, AJ Styles versus Jackson Riker. So, obviously, both being part of tag teams. AJ Styles is tag team champions with Amos. Jackson Riker is in a tag team with Elias. But they had none of their partners at ringside here, so no Amos at ringside. It was like a TNA throwback match, Gunner versus AJ Styles. So AJ Styles throws Jackson Riker back into the ring after they brawl onto the outside, and then Elias, I mean, this match literally went just a couple of minutes. Elias suddenly appears out of nowhere, smashes AJ Styles with a jumping knee. Styles goes back in the ring, and a swinging sidewalk slam, and Jackson Riker pinned AJ Styles. That is a real sentence. Guys, that is a real sentence. Jackson Riker pinned AJ Styles in a WWE ring. What a disgrace. What a disgrace. I I get they're progressing the feud, and I get if you're going to progress the feud, and if you're going to be a tag team, you can't pin a mask every single week. So if someone's going to get pinned, it's got to be AJ Styles. But you know what? I'd rather not live in the scenario whereby the way to get to a championship match is the champions have to get pinned. They do this all the time. We had the main event for the women's tag team titles this week. Why? Because the champions got pinned on SmackDown. Because that's how you earn a title shot, by pinning the champions. So your champions look crap, and then your challengers look crap when they eventually lose in the title match. Nobody wins. That's the problem with 50-50 booking. You try and make both people win, but nobody wins, including the fans. And it's stupid. So Jackson Riker actually pinned AJ Styles. I mean, awful. And out comes Amos, and he's furious. And in fairness, WWE, I hated the AJ Styles getting pinned by Jackson Riker, but the presentation of Amos is very, very good. It's very good. And Elias is hiding in the timekeeper's area, and they had a really good shot, the camera angle, whereby you're sort of looking at it from the ground up, and Elias is there, and you just see Amos towering over Elias, and he finds him. So Amos chases Jackson Riker and Elias up the set, and he pounces Elias into the set, which then malfunctions because Amos is so ginormous and strong. But the real takeaway from this is obviously the presentation of Amos is very, very good, but Jackson Riker pinned AJ Styles. That's a thing. And it makes AJ Styles just look like the biggest idiot, because apparently at this point in his career, despite AJ Styles being a multiple-time world champion, a Grand Slam champion, one of the best in-ring workers, one of the best professional wrestlers of his generation, AJ Styles can no longer defend himself unless he's got Amos with him. Otherwise, he's just Brian Myers or he's Kurt Hawkins. He can't win a match if he hasn't got an Amos with him. And I'm not sure what that does to the AJ Styles presentation. Like I said, I hate the presentation of AJ Styles losing to Jackson Riker, but the presentation of Amos is very good. But by God, AJ Styles lost to Jackson Riker. What the hell is that? I mean, seriously, what the hell is that? So we then had a Jeff Hardy promo about touring. Jeff Hardy still, yes, he's on Raw. A rare appearance for him not being on main event. He's just, essentially his promo was him just chanting Hardy. I thought my television had like stuck or something like that, like VCRs used to back in the day. The exciting thing, I suppose, the return to touring, and maybe this is why Jeff Hardy's so excited, is that he will be getting his old entrance theme back. No More Words will be returning. That's exciting. That's exciting. So I'm excited to see that. So maybe that's why he was so happy. We then have Sheamus in a match against Humberto Carrillo. And, man, Humberto Carrillo looks great, doesn't he? I mean, he's physically transformed himself. He looks to be in just fantastic shape. And to be honest, if you look at people on the Raw roster over the course of, well, not just the Raw roster, the WWE roster in this pandemic era, has there been anyone more consistent than Sheamus? I mean, really, there's an argument to be made that this guy is just having the most consistent matches every single week, knocking it out of the park. He's not been given sometimes the best creative, but he's been in feuds with the likes of, Jeff Hardy or now, like I said, Humberto Carrillo, Drew McIntyre, when he was the whole Keith Lee and the Team Raw thing and all that kind of stuff. Every single time, he's just knocked out of the park. And this was a guy they were saying might have to retire a couple of years ago because of spinal stenosis in his neck. And this guy now is the United States champion. He's in the shape of his life, and he is just Mr. Consistency. Mr. Consistency. And he is a great U.S. champion. A great U.S. champion. He's a veteran on the roster at this point. He's trying to elevate younger talent. He's such a great heel. He's so good at what he does. He really is great at what he does. Humberto Carrillo hit a nice suicide dive in this match. Humberto Carrillo's got a great suicide dive. It's a bit like Darby Allin's in the sense that I hate people that do the suicide dive. And the whole point of the suicide dive, it's in the name. It's that you're using your body as a weapon. You're literally throwing yourself at people. And some people forget that. But Humberto Carrillo, Darby Allin does the same. Where they launch themselves at the opponent. And it's great. It's fantastic. So in the finish, Humberto goes for a roll-up. Sheamus sits down, grabs the tights, gets the victory. Post-match, Sheamus continues to attack Humberto Carrillo. He locks in the cloverleaf submission. Suddenly, Ricochet flies into the ring out of nowhere, hits a missile dropkick. Then we get some moonsaults by Ricochet and Humberto, a springboard 450 by Ricochet to Sheamus, and that's the segment. So I would assume that we will probably be getting a Hell in a Cell, a triple threat US Championship match, Sheamus versus Ricochet, Humberto. I know people will say get the title on Ricochet and all that kind of stuff. I don't see why you get it off Sheamus at the moment. I don't. I think his work as the US Champion's been excellent. I know he's got the whole open challenge without defending the US Championship, but again, there is nobody more consistent than Sheamus, and he is helping elevate people like Carrillo and Ricochet, because he has great matches every single week. So I think Sheamus is doing a great job. I really do. So we're getting in the home stretch of the show here, finally. We have a backstage segment with Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax ahead of the Women's Tag Team Titles main event. They talk about last week being a fluke and it won't happen again. Shayna Baszler says that Nia Jax has been distracted because of Reginald, whereas Nia Jax says that Shayna is a bully. Chance to be a fine thing. Shayna Baszler, Nia Jax rather, says that Reginald is having triple vision. He's having nightmares. Shayna says that they used to be unstoppable before Reginald. Now Reginald's involved. Nia Jax is always distracted. So Shayna Baszler tells Reginald, you stay backstage. Stay backstage, Reginald. This is the main event segment, guys. I mean, this is, honestly, it's madness. So before we get to the main event, we have another Eva Marie vignette. This time, I think this was a new one. She's talking about physical strength. She's talking about discipline, consistency. She says, I've been training men and women all around the world to become better versions of themselves. And that's what I want to do for people here in WWE. She's still going to get booed. I mean, this one wasn't actually that bad. It was a decent vignette, and it was semi, I guess, inspirational. But she's still going to get booed. You can be inspirational as you want. It's still Eva Marie in a WWE ring. She will get booed. That's just how it works. And unless they are going for the just over-the-top, I'm a role model, and I can be so inspirational that it's over-the-top and that's a heel, that presentation can work. The presentation of Eva Marie as a babyface is laughable. They can do it in the Thunderdome because they can control the reaction. They can't control the crowds back once they get to July. And if they think that Eva Marie is going to work as an inspirational babyface, man, they're out of touch. But then I guess we had this main event and this closing show angle. I mean, that is out of touch. So we get to the main event, Women's Tag Team Championships. And no disrespect to the teams, but I was shocked that this was the main event. I'm glad putting the Women's Tag Team titles in the main event. You could say that at least they're trying to make them relevant, but it was not a main event match. It was not a main event match. It was not a main event angle. This was the match that should have been in the middle of the show. This was a match that should have been in the middle of the show, not even, to be honest, the top of the hour, let alone the main event angle. And I know some people can say, well, the 3 hours, is the main event really the end of the show? To me, it always will be. And I know that this was meant to be the cliffhanger or the reason to watch Raw next week. I know they promoted some of the other stuff that's meant to be on the show, whether it's Bobby Lashley's opponent being determined of Kofi Kingston and Drew McIntyre and all that kind of other stuff. But I think most people thought, okay, we're going to have the Women's Tag Team titles here. We're going to see this closing show angle that's going to involve Alexa Bliss. She's been involved in this. We kind of got it with the fire that came up, but we didn't because they just ignored it. They went, I wonder what that fire was. Like Alexa Bliss didn't do it last week when she came out. Anyway, I mean, I would be fascinated to see the ratings on this one. I don't even know if they're going to be out there this week. I know Showbuzz Daily has been down recently, so I don't know what's going on. So Shayna Baszler locks in the sharpshooter on Natalya, and then out comes Reginald. Just ignored the advice. Stay away. Gotcha. Comes out about a minute into it. Oh, good one. Good one, Reginald. So Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler work over Tamina. I think Corey Graves got bored at this point because I'm not exaggerating. Now, this might have been just my sort of wandering ear of me getting bored as well. But Corey Graves got so bored, he started doing music references on commentary. I'm not exaggerating. I heard about 4 or 5 different country music references. He then started doing a Phil Collins reference. He then did a Johnny Cash reference. So I think him or Vince McMahon or people watching backstage, they got bored because they started to go into Corey Graves, just start doing musical references. This is like a show that USA Network are paying billions of dollars for in television right fees, and they've got Corey Graves on live television, on commentary, doing references like Walk the Line. Come on. You know it's bad. They're purposely doing bad television at this point. It was crazy. It was so bad it was crazy. So Shayna Baszler has the match won. I think she's pinning Natalya. And Reginald gets up on the apron. He distracts the referee accidentally. Shayna Baszler is furious. She tells Reginald to leave. So he starts walking up the ramp like he's going to leave. And suddenly fire explodes again. And the announce team start like, oh, what a fireworks malfunction. Look at that pyro malfunction. Like it didn't happen last week. He was walking around with sunglasses on because he got burnt last week because of Alexa Bliss's pyro. The same thing happens this week. And the announcers, I don't know what that is. Oh, we've got 3 Sherlocks on the commentary desk, haven't we? Oh, Sherlock, we've got Holmes, Watson, and still Adnan Virk doesn't know what's going on either. I can believe, to be honest, Adnan Virk doesn't know what's going on because he doesn't know what's going on for the 3 hours anyway. So I wouldn't put it past him to go, I don't know, was that an accident? I mean, he was asking Kofi Mania was back in the day earlier on in the show, so he probably wouldn't know about the pyro. Anyway, so Reginald gets burnt alive again. as this, fire explosion, and we get a distraction inside Cradle. It wouldn't be an episode of Monday Night Raw without a distraction roll-up. A distraction inside Cradle by Natalya, and they retain. So it wasn't much of a match. And I was thinking this with Reginald because they had the post-show angle. They had the post-show angle, a post-match angle with Reginald afterwards. There is this weird obsession. Someone obviously has got a thing for Reginald in terms of his character, his gimmick. I don't know. But someone is obsessed with these Reginald stories because he's everywhere. If he's not on SmackDown, he's on Raw. He's got, stories with Carmella, Sasha Banks, Alexa Bliss, now Shayna Baszler. I mean, he's everywhere. He's everywhere. Someone is just the biggest Reginald fan, that they see gold in this guy, that he's main eventing Raw. He's in the closing show angle and segment for Monday Night Raw at this point. He's everywhere. So Shayna's furious that she's lost the titles again. She calls Reginald a son of a bitch and calls him a twerp. And then this is the big moment, guys. This is the thing that's going to get, okay, I'm not sure I was going to watch Raw next week. I'm still on the fence. I know we're heading towards Hell in the Cell. There's lots going on. We've got fans returning in July. What have WWE got planned for us that's really going to, hook us in next week? And she goes, look, Reginald, I challenge you to a match next week. And says if you have the balls, that you will accept this challenge. And that's it. That's how they ended Raw. Shayna Baszler and Reginald, that's the closing show segment. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And then this will be the stuff. That, again, I don't know if ratings are going to come out this week because Showbuzz Daily is down. They will. They'll come out, but they won't have like a real detailed breakdown of it. But if the ratings suck, they have no excuse. They have no excuse to say why. They really don't. They can't be like, I don't know what it was. I thought we put on a good show. I thought we put on, a good show. I thought that was good. Come on. That was your closing show. That was the thing to end the show. Reginald and Shayna Baszler. I mean, don't get me wrong. Shayna Baszler, if this was NXT Shayna Baszler, she could have made that work. But not this. Not this. Not this version of Shayna Baszler. Not this Reginald. It's horrifying. I mean, this is the same. This is Monday Night Raw. This is this is the flagship of WWE. This was the show that beat Monday Nitro in the Monday Night Wars. This is meant to be the lifeblood of the company. And look how far it's come. That now you've got the closing show segment of Shayna Baszler challenging Reginald after he nearly got exploded. And his sunglasses flew off. And the announcers tried to play up that they didn't know what was going on. It was just a disaster. It was just an absolute disaster. And who wrote this? Because whoever wrote this is getting unbelievably overpaid. I mean, if I'm Vince McMahon, I'm sitting there backstage, because that's how they do it backstage now, isn't it? Like, Vince McMahon's sitting like I am, and next to him is Bruce Pritchard, and they look at each other and high-five each other about how great the show is. If I'm Vince McMahon, I'm looking at Bruce. I mean, I guess Bruce is looking back at Vince going, what was that? Is that the best you could come up with? Seriously. That would be the question I would ask here. Honestly, is that the best that you can come up with? Because if that is the best that you can come up with, you might as well quit now. Honestly, I could fart and come up with a better that would be more entertaining than what I saw at the end. Honestly, it was just the worst. I mean, honestly, it was the worst. And I don't know what the rating's going to look like. They'll probably be around 1.7, 1.8, because that's what Raw is at this point. Unless it's a holiday, it doesn't go down to 1.4 or 1.3. And I don't want to bring like AEW into it and all that kind of stuff, but there is. I know there will be on social media, because there are people that justify it. There is no justifying that show. There is no justifying that show. Certainly that main event. There is no justifying that. There was nothing redeemable out of that main event. Nothing. There is no point that I could go, well, I can see what they were trying to do there, or I can see what their intention was there. People will talk about, well, you're trying to elevate the women's tag team titles. They're trying to make the women's tag team titles mean something. Well, that's admirable that you're really that naive. But frankly, the match sucked. It doesn't matter where it was put on the show. The match sucked. If anything, that did damage to the women's tag team titles, because the match wasn't about the women's tag team titles. It was about Reginald and having his head nearly explode, and then Shayna Baszler challenging him to a match. Like, that was what everyone wanted to see. Could you imagine? This is the real question. Could you imagine they would do that angle with an audience? The answer is no. They would have not done that angle with an audience, because the fans would have been like, this is bullshit. It was awful. They get booed out of the building like that's the big closer of the show. Fans would be livid. They'd be absolutely livid with that. So it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But look, guys, as always, it's enough ranting for one Monday evening. If you have enjoyed this stream, certainly if you didn't enjoy Raw, but if you've enjoyed this stream, smash a like on the like button. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and tuning into these Raw reactions. Hopefully they're a bit more entertaining than the show. But look, guys, as always, thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this stream today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.